A very warm welcome to all our panelists. I'm Kavya Kanchana, and I'm going to be your moderator for the next 1 hour or so while we converse with our panel of accomplished leaders in STEM. STEM, to say the least, is one of the most fascinating, dynamic, and extremely impactful domains of study and work. More diversity and inclusion in STEM are not just a good metric to have, but it is a must have as I see it, because consider this simple logic. We need equal representation among the experts who are designing the solutions that's going to solve some of the world's largest challenges. And these challenges don't see gender, don't see nationality, don't see color or race. So today, through our panelists' personal growth and success stories, I hope we can all get more inspired to study, work, and make our own contributions to this field of STEM. And also, let us take a moment to acknowledge while we listen to them how much more enriching this field can be with equal and diverse representation. So, without further delay, let us get into our conversation. My first question is going to be an open question to all the panelists. Maybe we'll do a round robin. I'll call out each of your names for the convenience. I would like each of the panelists to tell us a little bit more about your work. Like, what is it that you do in your current job role? And also give us a little bit of glimpse of how you came about working in STEM. Was it a choice that you made early on, or was it chance? And last, what makes you stay in STEM?
A little bit about myself. I'm Mashmi Bhatt from Micron Technology, and I'm responsible for driving our external manufacturing supply chain, supporting Micron's assembly and test operations and making some of the world's most advanced memories, semiconductor memories, and storage solutions. And before I start, I'd like to say it's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this General Assembly STEM panel and to be speaking alongside some women experts in STEM who have greatly influenced the makeup of our global workforce through their courage, their resilience, and by being role models for our next generation of STEM professionals. So very happy to be here. I started my career in semiconductors about 25 years ago. And I must say that I fell in love with semiconductors during my undergraduate days. And this is when I got to take a peek into a clean room. A clean room is essentially an ultra clean factory, or in the university, it was a lab, where we build our microchips. And those of you that understand semiconductors, you will know that the cleanliness requirements are very, very stringent. And to me, at that point, I think I must have been 16 or 17. This was like a starship on Earth. And everything looked so complicated and so unconventional that all of those attributes basically drew me in, right? And I have never since looked back. So that's how my journey, or my love story with semiconductors started, if you will. It was completely a choice. And what keeps me in it? The innovation and the opportunity for discovery. Innovation provides a possibility to aggressively create a world or create applications or solutions that drive for social, economic, and let's say environmental parity. And for me, those are some huge priorities for my profession. And this is exactly what keeps me excited and connected to the world of electronics.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Zhang from Temasek Life Science Laboratory. So I'm a cell biologist. So in my lab, we use yeast, like a model system to study membrane organization inside the cells. So we actually, perhaps you all guys knows like Baker yeast. So we use like very small single cell organisms. So a lot of my work is actually, you need the microscope to see the cells. And then, so we actually, so now we have the lab, so I have a lab teams. So we are basically looking and then to find interesting things happens in the cells. So for me, my journey with STEM, and I think I grown up in China. So and my generation, there's a lot of emphasis on the STEM. So a lot of good students actually choose the STEM. Majority of them actually choose STEM. For me, I take biology. I mean, in particular, it's at the time when I was in secondary school. It's a time when the birth of the Dolly in UK. So it's like a big breakthrough in the human, like, biotechnology. So this is really motivated like young students like us. And also at time we have the slogan saying that 21st century is century for life science. So we all want to be part of that. So I choose life science and also be part of, like, it fits very well with my personality. So I'm kind of a kid, always asking why type of questions. So I really like asking questions and figuring things out. So I think research is one way, like, really fits what I am. So I kind of stay. So this curiosity and this passion like drove me and then dragged me like stay in the field. Now I'm kind of research, and I want this can be continuous to find a new things in my career.
What I do in the Singapore Space and Technology Limited is we are primarily a space organization headquartered out of Singapore. We do a range of activities and services, starting from connecting companies, MNCs, government organizations, education institutions who are interested to leverage on space technology to develop advanced systems or to revolutionize or maybe even make moderate improvements in the way things are done. For example, many of you would realize that satellite technology is the technology enabling communications. And in a time during COVID, where there was increasing digital divide, organizations were able to leverage on satellite technologies to provide communications to areas where workforce or humans can't necessarily travel because of the lockdown. And therefore, organizations, they don't have to be from the space industry, but they could be service providers who might want to leverage or know more about the space technology industry. They can work with us to find out how they can be connected to the advanced technologies. Another example is in advanced manufacturing and 3D printing that we hear, and also in quantum computing. These are all deep technologies which can coalesce, leveraging with space technology to change the ways we do things on Earth that will benefit people, that will benefit businesses, that will benefit organizations. We also accelerate technology adoption. Two main ways we do this is through our Space Tech Accelerator program. We have 30 over startups from all over the world, including Hong Kong and New Zealand and Latvia and Europe, who are part of our program because the space industry is very ubiquitous. It is very large scale. So going away from, Professor Zhang, who they are doing, going down into the beauty of microorganisms, we are now really talking about things which are all so far out, expansive into the universe. And therein lies the part which is really, I think I have it lucky in that my job is intuitively, naturally exciting for people who love science and technology and engineering. I'm very fortunate to be working in this sector. Every day we are learning something new, and there's a very inherent excitement in space technology. So I'm very grateful for that and happy to be sharing more with you about engaging people into STEM and into the space technology.
You put it in the right words, from microorganisms for which we need a telescope to see, right, all the way to the stars up in the sky. Great. Thank you so much for that sharing. I think next is Dr. Aishwarya.
I am an engineer by training, and I have degrees in electrical and biomedical engineering. Currently, I head the Translational Core, which is a research group at the N1 Institute for Health at the National University of Singapore. The N1 Institute is a university-level research institute which works towards the vision of bridging innovation to clinical translation. And we have several groups working on various pressing needs such as personalized medicine, digital health and therapeutics, robotics, and so on. Where my research group fits into this is we are, like I said, called the Translational Core, where we are a multidisciplinary team of clinicians and scientists. And we work on developing wearable bioengineering solutions for unmet clinical needs in the oncology and neurology spectrum. And we do this in a approach which we call bedside to bench and back. And what I mean by that is that along with the clinicians, we identify unmet clinical needs from the clinical setting, and we bring the problem statement back to the lab, where we develop wearable or non-invasive therapeutics and diagnostics. We study the mechanisms involved, we optimize the parameters, and in the next step, we work with a whole array of professionals, including clinicians, patients, regulators, funding agencies, to translate these solutions into patient care, first testing it in healthy volunteers and then patients for safety and efficacy. To answer your question, if it was choice or chance, I would say my journey of becoming and being a biomedical engineer was definitely an intentional choice. And I would say it was crafted and molded a little bit by serendipity along the way. For me, the most important factor was the exposure to the choices of careers which I was fortunate to be given, and not restricted to the traditional restrictive pool of trendy and traditional options, which I think is an important factor for students and early career professionals to take into consideration. And why I love what I do, I concur with all our panelists in sharing the excitement in innovation and research. So being in the path of health tech innovation allows me to interact with several different professionals who each come in with a unique mindset and a skill set. And all these culminate in being at the crux of technology and medicine, in developing solutions to be delivered to patient care. And this is certainly very gratifying and keeps me going.
My next round of questions is going to be a little more specific to each one of you. And this is out of personal curiosity to know what's coming next in each of your field. And I think audience would also be curious to know more about it. I want to start with Dr. Maushmi, if I may. You work in the semiconductor industry, and you have worked with heavyweights like Motorola, Global Foundries, and now with Micron. Silicon industry's revenue has been booming, mainly from cloud, IT, and mobile revolution. But what do you see as the next wave for the silicon chips? Where is this industry evolving? Can you give us a brief view into that?
The future is always very exciting to look into. Well, first of all, let me start with the economy. The economy is transitioning from what we traditionally knew as oil and gas and aviation and defense to pharma, electronics, smart transport, and sustainable food, sustainable everything, right? In fact, just for an example, my PhD dissertation 25 years ago was funded by the Defense Department. And then the chips I worked on, or the innovation I worked on, is now part of everyday life, right? Also, just to reflect back on what the industry brings to you, our memory and storage solutions now support all your work from home economy, your space research, your med tech, and pretty much anywhere that a memory solution is required. So in terms of the big trends that you asked about, I will talk about the next 5 years, and I'll just name the top 3. And these will be more in the area of manufacturing, semiconductor manufacturing. So the 3 I see are high-tech precision manufacturing, you call that out, automation, we have to get to a point where we're not dependent on human power, COVID taught us that, and mobility, right? So in high-tech manufacturing, there's a plethora of, secondary industries that are growing on. There's tons of software innovation, AI, ML, RPA, marketplace, blockchain, name it, just name it. And then the projection in that area is that our data and knowledge-based economy will make up as much as 30% of our 2030 GDP. So there is huge growth in everything associated with high precision manufacturing, which brings up a related area, which is we should be seeing a dramatic scale up in robotics in manufacturing, right? In the application of robotics in manufacturing. So that would be anywhere you can think of, like maintenance, logistics, order management, name it. So the next supporting industry that goes with this is obvious. It's automation, so it's IoT. Basically, manufacturing will require IoT to be far ahead of all of these innovations. So IoT will require precision sensors to bring the data home, hyperconnectivity, massive data storage and processing. And mind you, what we are trying to do with all these IoT is we're trying to augment the human capabilities. So there is a lot of work to be done there. And finally, you've worked with Qualcomm, so you named Qualcomm, so the mobility. Bringing all of this home will be the deployment of 5G network. So 5G networks over our cloud infrastructure will have to gear up towards utilizing edge computing with very low latency and high speed. And the whole idea is that at the end of the day, we should be able to make real-time decisions right at the point of use with, to optimize our production and our efficiency. So those are really the three big, areas, industrial areas of revolutionary, or evolution, I should say, we should be seeing in the next 5 years.
Thanks for summarizing that. It's quite helpful. And I would assume each of those threads are going to give us opportunities for more career growth for anybody who's choosing to be in the high-tech manufacturing space. Dr. Dan, my next question is to you. I understand that at TLL, you focus on research on cellular biology, if I heard you right. So can you share with the audience more on what are the areas of research work that happen in this space, and help us relate to how the work that happens in the lab can then impact adjoining fields like medicine or maybe even tech, right? The area where Dr. Aishwarya is working in. So just help us to connect the dots a little bit.
In the TLL, we have actually a lot of labs, and they're dealing with different organisms. They have different section in mind to pursuing. So I would say mainly there are two categories. One is for example, myself, my group is mainly focused on the basic studies. So when I refer to basic studies, actually, which means this type of study doesn't really have a specific application in mind. So we're not focusing on to do any specific, like to solving, for example, like disease or curing anything. So this is more like the aiming is to filling the gaps of knowledge of the world. So we are trying to find and discover new insights from the mechanism, how cells, how organism is operating, and understand the life better. So usually such type of basic studies is not really that, I would say, quite invisible to the public, because but they are very influential. They are the fundamental foundations for all kinds of innovation in the end. But usually it takes like decades to accumulate the knowledges and also for the studies. And then we have the mature set of the knowledge to start with or translating all this knowledge into the technologies. So we also have other things going on in the TLL. For example, many labs actually more close to application. So I can specify a few of such cases. For example, we have a lab study virus. Okay, the human virus, also including some of them, they are now looking to the corona, like COVID. We hopefully this is also related to the vaccination and helping the solving the COVID problem. We also have people looking to, for example, bird flu and hand-mouse foot disease. So those are viral problem, and then this is also need a lot of basic studies, as well as they can develop vaccines. They also can develop testing kits for diagnosing this type of disease. We also have the group, they are looking to cancer therapy. So they come up with the strategy using the animals to cure the cancer so those are already in the clinical trials. We also have the labs. So those established labs, they start with the basic studies, but with the decades of studies, they have actually accumulated a lot of knowledge field. For example, we have the Dr. Alain Zhongchao's lab. They are using, they study the rice, like cultivate a different good species of rice, and then they can resistant to the drought, and then they have used minimal waters, for example, to grow, and they have high hybrid contact and neutron contact. And this actually from like 20 years studies, now they already have this Temasek rice now available in the market. So actually this kind of, you will see how the researchers can actually translate their learn to the market. And we also now, we have a few labs that actually working in the plant. So they are studying the flowering of plant, the mechanism, how the plant actually transitions from the vegetative growth to the plant, to the flowering stage. And then they use the knowledge trying to increase the yield of the leafy vegetables. And then this is actually very well in line with now the 30 by 30 initiative, then to helping solving the food security in Singapore, and then worldwide challenges for that. So all of that, I just want to say that research is actually, you can see how many, is based on the studies and the knowledge, and then this eventually will change the life, impact the social, our community, and then helping us to get a better life in general. Yeah.
My next question is to Dr. Aishwarya, and this is quite interesting for me from the wearables angle. So you're a scholar in bioengineering. You mentioned electrical and biomedical. So looking at the advancements that we are making in both medicine and tech sides of the world, may I ask you, what's the next fascinating thing at the intersection of biology, medicine, and tech? Are we anywhere close to becoming cyborgs within this next 50 years?
Surely the marriage or merger of technology and medicine has come a far way in the past decades. And it has even transformed into so many different dimensions today, which we wouldn't have imagined back then. And especially in the past year and the current year, there are so many fascinating solutions which have come about by this merger of technology and medicine. And I think that can be spoken about at great length by itself. But what I appreciate is the fact that this the fusion of fields has and the translation of the solutions which have come about has translated to the real world in a fraction of the time from what it would have taken in a so-called normal world. And I think this is purely because of the common purpose, priority, and urgency which the pandemic situation has brought about. And I think that is something for us to learn and bring forward to translating our science and technology into future applications. And I think the way this panel is structured is very beautiful. We had Dr. Maushmi and Dr. Dan talk about how various technologies are emerging, and also how these are being applied into studying the so-called fundamental answers to life. And then it comes to healthcare, where it is translating these answers to healthcare and patient care. And there's even a lot of studies happening where humans are put into space, or simulated space environment is created on land to observe how we can sustain in other environments, and so on. So I guess interdisciplinary is the key word going forward. I don't know about cyborgs, but where I see the future headed to is with the whole digital health revolution kicking in, is healthier human lifespans, healthy aging and longevity, and with the rise of wearables being picked up by all of us, literally the health management is at our fingertips. And it's very heartening to see that there is a whole shift of mindset, technology, and culture from cure to prevention, and also from sick care to healthcare. And I think this is going to, revolutionize the field of technology and medicine going forward.
With the help of tech, the domains are fusing together. So yeah, thanks for calling on that. Always very fascinating to see how quickly and dynamically some of these revolutions are happening, from sick care to healthcare. There we go. My last question in this round is to Ms. Lina Tan, and your work is truly, truly fascinating. Any kid growing up, looking up at the sky, wondering about whether there are aliens or not, right? But on a serious note, I read in your bio that your work, that you work to help develop use cases of satellite technologies for economic development. Can you share a little more on how space tech and other industries and domains are connected? You mentioned about communications earlier, and how that has really exploded during the pandemic time, and maybe also give us a view of how the Southeast Asian space sector looks like. We always hear and get to read about the large countries in space, but really curious to know what Singapore and our neighbors are doing in this area.
We do connect key players to leverage on space technology to be more integrated with our everyday lives. And it is already happening, these kind of connections. One of the things we do also is in cultivating talent to stimulate interest in STEM, leveraging from existing space programs. And to draw a reference, for example, we do genetics, small genetics experiments with in the microgravity environment on board the International Space Station. So we did approach Temasek lab because we had some seeds. We had 2 batches of seeds. One was being grown by the astronaut to learn more about germination of seeds and cotyledons in a microgravity and space environment. And we had some primary school kids now in Singapore and in Thailand doing a comparative study. So this is a nation regional-wide initiative led by the JAXA. We also have another experiment where we have flown seeds procured in Singapore, and they are now flying on board the International Space Station. So the seeds will undergo microgravity and space environment. Sometime in September, we will bring them back. So these are coriander seed and butterhead lettuce. We will bring these seeds back and grow them in Singapore, and we will study whether an exposure in the space environment is going to affect the germination, the food quality, the nutritional value, or is that going to create new breeds? Previous experiments done by other space countries, space organizations have some positive results. So if that's something we could take on further, we can do that with some of the organizations here. When we approached Temasek, they said they were interested only in rice. So we were not able to fly rice because we couldn't export rice into Japan. So well, it's space, right? There's still Earth regulations we have to abide. So Japan, the Japanese country, Japan doesn't allow the import of rice because they have a domestic market. And so we could only export certain markets, certain seeds up into space. And through these kind of experiments and programs, we want to leverage on it to get people excited. We do have young students who wrote in and they're very excited with the experiment, but also in the sustainability angle. How exactly like what Temasek is doing, how are we making the quality and the yield of the seed of a superior quality for sustainability? So we use less water, we use less fertilizer, but we can pack it with nutrients. And that's an area of space technologies being part of our everyday life. And I also spoke about telecommunication, all these phones that we have, or Hungry Go Where, and a few years ago, the Pokemon fad, they are all leveraging on ubiquitous connectivity enabled by a satellite asset up in space. We don't see it, but we have satellite technology in the palm of our hand. And that's been increasing because of the technologies and advances in electronics, in integrated circuit. So some of these, very exciting things that my fellow panelists have spoken about have found their way to coalesce with space tech to make space tech more accessible and more democratized. In fact, it's a very symbiotic relationship. The integrated circuit was one of the most underrated invention of the NASA mission. They wanted to send people to the moon, but they needed robots. So, what we call IoT, which is in fact MEMS, and communications technology, in situ processing, was advanced with the Apollo mission. And in order to do computing, they needed an integrated circuit. And that was one of the spin-off from the NASA technology that we have seen pervading, coming into everyday lives. And I did talk a little bit about COVID and what we want to do, creating that use cases for countries who are experiencing potential digital divide exacerbated with COVID pandemic. And we are now prepared for any more pandemic to come. We want to leverage again on a ubiquitous assets with the advance of electronics and digitalization to provide digital access to students, workers, farmers in every part of the world, because there is a dramatic digitalization of the modern world, and we don't want the divide to be too large. And a lot of this was actually spoken about by my fellow panelists, Musumi, sorry if I mispronounced, she spoke a lot about the important advances, and that is starting to be integrated with many technologies that we see, and that is hopefully going to make life better and more sustainable for all of us.
From space seeds to IC chips, it's a good storyline that you painted. The hand that satellite tech has in making connectivity ubiquitous and making and giving democratic access to everyone in the planet, right, to high tech, and thereby elevating our daily lifestyles, right, and what we have access to do. The next question that I have is sort of a two-part question, and any of you can try to answer it from an angle that you are familiar with or that based on your experience. So, and this is more for those who are aspiring to make a career in STEM. Are the skills that are needed to succeed in STEM changing? Like, can you comment on what are some of the important skill sets needed today in 2021 and the future? Or you could also think about when you made your career decisions, like what were those skills that helped you the most, or something that you got or acquired along the way? You can answer this from an angle of experience or an angle of understanding, or it could also be based on what you learned from a book or a course or a role model. I leave it to you.
I can take that. So yeah, your question has many dimensions to it. So
I'm sorry for that.
Let me see if I could answer it. So, for me, the big thing, like I said, is innovation and discovery and the world of possibility that it opens up. And it's also important to remember that, in my case, for example, I've seen it over the last 25 years being a veteran in this field, that nothing stays static, right? The world needs new things tomorrow. And I'll quote from Isaac Asimov, who basically wrote iconic books on robots and science fiction back in the 1950s. And one of the things he said is, today's science fiction is tomorrow's science facts, right? We all, at least I grew up watching Star Trek, where you beam your messages from your palm, and Lynette, just talked about the same thing. So yes, we evolve. Things we worked on yesterday become everyday topics in the current area. So what I would say is, what is very important is to always maintain a growth mindset. And as you maintain a growth mindset, it's important to look back and make sure that you're able to go back to what excites you, what you're good at, and how can you grow to make all of that relevant to what the world needs. Okay, the world today, unlike 25 years ago where I started my career, is full of opportunities and problems with solutions waiting to be discovered. So this means that we should be ready to apply our skills and what we like and what we have a passion for to what the world needs to be solved today. And that basically means that you need to continue to retool yourself and to be a lifelong learner, so you can apply everything you've gained to the problems of tomorrow.
I do have some questions from the audience coming in. Why should more women make a career in STEM? I would like to post that to Lynette.
I think fundamentally, you don't have to choose a career in STEM. You should choose a career you are genuinely interested in. And I think what many of us are doing here on this panel is to make sure that an interested, talented, capable young lady doesn't face biasness or exclusions, subconscious or conscious in the workplace. And that's what we're advocating here. I think I speak on behalf of everyone here that we're very proud and we are excited to be in the STEM sector, but you don't have to be in the STEM sector. I think basic, again, first rules apply in picking a career that you are genuinely interested in, and so that you can contribute, to your self-fulfillment, to society, and to greater good. But if you are interested in STEM, I think it is a place where there is tremendous intellectual stimulation. And on the other hand, don't underestimate the importance of other sectors that maybe what I sometimes STEM advocates go like, the banking sector. They're all actually very important because the economy and society work in an integrated manner, in that your projects need to be funded. Someone has to be paying for it. Someone needs to be benefiting from it. So don't underestimate the importance of learning about other industries and sectors, and being, comfortable in integrating that into your project and work. But yeah, as an advocate for the STEM sector, I really think it is a day where I don't really remember any day where I didn't learn anything new. And when you are pushing the innovation frontier, it's really exciting to be right at the precipice.
No industry or field of work exists in isolation, right? So it's an integrated world that we live in. STEM is fascinating, but so are all the other fields. And I think this series of events that GA has put together throws light on some of the significant work happening in all the other areas of work as well. So encouraging the audience to listen more. On to the next question from the audience. How do you think inclusion and diversity should be incorporated and nurtured in the academic system? I want to pose this to Dr. Dan, because you are more into the research and academic side.
Of course, the diversity, because is like many of my students actually not from Singapore. So they're actually from different education backgrounds. So they actually, you see the education structures from different countries, slightly different. So this is kind of like the mutual interactions, the way of the angles that people sees the same problem could be different, and then that can inspire the ideas, and then very new that is something that I think the academic side or the scientific thing, it really calls for the different angles of visualizing the problem. So I guess this is a very important, have this inclusion of diversity in this science. But gender-wise, I would say, because I see a lot of, there's not much of bias to me. Actually, I like girls really a lot. And my students are really a lot of female, like ladies are really, really very, very talented. So I would say that usually like women are kind of very good at multitasking. And I guess many of you could agree that in the lab, we really need very meticulous, to look into the results and to pay a lot of attention in the details. And I think a lot of my girl students are really very good at that. So I would say from my perspective, because we see a lot of very great graduate students, the girls, but not, in reality, there are still quite many of them actually leave academia after they pursuing graduate studies. And it's a pity. And of course, there are many reasons or personal reasons, but I would say that for myself, I would encourage the people who really have the passion. And I agree with Ling that the interest, your inner interest is really important. It's like you need to choose a field that you feel you have the passion for that, and listen to your heart. And sometimes it's just for girls, you need to be more confident. Like you have to, you don't be afraid of, because in academia, it's never been very smooth. You will always have negative results, and you always have still stuck in the puzzles to solving or figuring things out. And it is like true to all the scientists at a certain stage of their career. So I can see that not just girls or maybe boys, they will get frustrated in the academia, because some of the kind of frustrating period when you're pursuing the particular scientific inquiries you have. So I would say that we have to be really open and be confident, and then persistent, and to keep your interest is going, like your curriculum. And I think this is very important. As I said, so it's very diverse ideas. We really encourage with people with really different background, with different angle of viewing things, and this is very important. And I think the equality of inclusion of girls and boys field, that would be very great. So this is also, that's what I think.
I want to go to our next question. We have many more actually. Can you please share any government resources or initiatives to support women in STEM? I'm assuming this is related to maybe Singapore, or if any of you can give an angle from a different country in Asia, that would also be helpful.
I think this year the Prime Minister of Singapore has come on to declare this as the Singapore Year for Women in Tech, and there have been a very dedicated, deliberate, and large-scale profiling of women in tech. First, I think that's awareness raising. The second step is in role modeling. And I know that there are also works that could be drilling down into the specifics of specific skills, tools, and awareness to educate men and women in the workforce to understand how to create more inclusiveness in the workforce. Now, are there specific funding related to it? That I'm not aware of, but generally in my career, even as a student, attending overseas colleges or any school, there are generally awards for diversity, women in technology, women in leadership. So they are quite commonplace. I don't think we also want to overswing and exclude talented young men in the STEM sector. So these efforts have to be led with caution. But if you talk about large-scale awareness raising, profiling initiatives, I think this is the year where we will see a lot of it happening.
On to the next question. I think, Moshmi, you indicated that you would like to take this one. So do you see that the higher up you go in STEM leadership, the bigger the gender gap?
The short answer is yes. And what I would like to do is I would like to refer you back to an article on Straits Times somewhere in the end of October last year. And the title was Singapore Ties with Italy in having most number of women as CEOs. So of course I got excited and I went in and started looking at it, and guess what? That number that we tied at was 15%. So of course I was immediately really not happy. But again, there is another qualifier. This is CEOs, not necessarily women CEOs in tech. And so I read the article, I read it over and over again to see how many women CEOs in tech, and there wasn't even a mention of it. So this is, and I'm not even sure I know of any women CEOs in tech. I think there's probably one. So of course, the short answer is yes, it becomes harder. And there are hundreds of reasons for it, right? So before we start talking about the hundreds of reasons, I think what I would want to offer as the next step so that we can fix those ladders those rungs in the ladder is for everyone that is in tech, men and women, we can all take charge to help fix this gender gap as we go up the ranks. And my first call to action would be to all the women leaders that are in tech today. And that number globally is around 30%. No, I think it's about 27% or something like that. It depends on what stats you're looking at. But we can complain about the glass being half full, half empty. It's actually a third full. So with the glass being third full, those 30% of the women in tech can reach out and do something about the women that have not made it there. And there are many, many areas to work on. And this forum, for example, is a great place to start and to bring to light the fact that there are people that are there and have made it there and are and are here to do their part to help bridge that gap. I have a daughter who is doing her PhD in chemical engineering, and she wants to be an entrepreneur. And I want to make sure that when she's out in the world to be an entrepreneur, she doesn't see the challenges that I have seen. And so this is a call to action.
I think this links to another question that we got from the audience, that do you think the leaky pipeline is still a reality in STEM? I think we answered that in part. The reason that we see a higher gender gap as we move up the ladder is because of the leaky pipeline. And unless any of you have a contradictory comment, I think it's a yes, right? It's a reality, but I think Dr. Maushmi gave us the way forward. All of us here can take the first step to solve it. Maybe there's a last question over to you, Aishwarya. Where are some of the challenges you have faced as a female in a generally male-dominated industry? Is your industry male-dominated? I know you're changing it, but tell us more.
I would rephrase it a little bit that, of course, there are a lot of challenges in any industry, and then we spoke about the leaky pipeline and how there are a lot of efforts going into changing it. But I would also add on saying that oftentimes before we go on to tackle the challenges, which we so-called phrase as the glass ceiling, especially when you go on to senior leadership and the lack of female CEOs and so on. I came upon this interesting idea that there is an inner glass ceiling, which each of us set for ourselves, where we kind of harbor on limiting beliefs and behaviors, where we see a lack of role models in our industries. And we kind of assume that, especially students and early career professionals, that this is maybe not an industry for me, and maybe this is only for men out there, or it's not a very diverse and inclusive environment for me to get into. So I guess that is something which we need more awareness and tackling on in terms of addressing the limiting beliefs and behaviors, which would enable us to go on to tackle the further challenges which are presented out there, I would say.
Absolutely. So there is a glass ceiling outside, but there is a glass ceiling inside as well, which each one of us ourselves can try to break. Thanks for that message. And I think that's a wonderful message to close our discussion today for. And thank you every one of you for sharing your journeys, sharing your success stories, and inspiring all the audience who joined us today. So towards more diversity and more inclusion in STEM and all the other fields.